Here's why Rhaenyra's revenge triggered the Dance of the Dragons. The Dance of the Dragons. A civil war so devastating, it shattered House Targaryen at the height of its power. Brother fought sister, dragon fought dragon, and the skies over Westeros burned. But what if the war was not simply about succession or politics? What if the true spark that ignited the inferno was something far more personal? Rhaenyra Targaryen's thirst for revenge. In this video, we'll unravel the events, betrayals, and tragedies that transformed Rhaenyra from the chosen heir of King Viserys into the queen whose wrath plunged the realm into chaos. We'll explore why her revenge, raw, human, and uncompromising, was the key trigger for the Dance of the Dragons, and how her choices reshaped Westeros forever. To understand her revenge, we first need to understand Rhaenyra. From childhood, she was declared the heir to her father, King Viserys. She was groomed to be queen, praised as the realm's delight, and given the trappings of power. Yet, despite the king's word, whispers always questioned her legitimacy. She was a woman in a realm unaccustomed to queens. Her marriages and children were constantly scrutinized. Behind smiles at court, nobles quietly wondered if a son would one day replace her. Rhaenyra lived in a shadow of doubt, where every look and every rumor threatened her crown. This constant insecurity planted seeds of anger, resentment, and the desire to prove herself, not just as heir, but as someone who would crush anyone who dared deny her. Enter Alicent Hightower, her stepmother, and once her friend. Their relationship began with warmth, but soured when Alicent gave King Viserys sons. Most importantly, Aegon. Suddenly, Rhaenyra's claim was not just a matter of being a woman. It was about surviving against a growing faction that wanted Aegon crowned instead. Alicent played the role of the dutiful queen, but she nurtured resentment toward Rhaenyra's behavior and her children's questionable parentage. Each side whispered against the other, building walls of hostility. For Rhaenyra, Alicent's existence was not only a political threat, but a personal betrayal. What once was friendship became rivalry, and that rivalry fed the fires of vengeance simmering in Rhaenyra's heart. If succession was about blood, then Rhaenyra's claim should have been unquestionable. She was the king's firstborn, raised as heir. But politics is rarely so clean. Rhaenyra's children by Laenor Velaryon were widely believed to be fathered by Ser Harwin Strong. This gave her enemies fuel to discredit her. Alicent's sons, Aegon and Aemond, represented a purer line, trueborn sons of the king and his queen. Every rumor about her children's bastardy was not just a slight. It was an attack on her future, her family, and her very identity. For Rhaenyra, revenge against those spreading these claims wasn't just emotional, it was survival. The real spark of her revenge came with the death of her son, Lucerys Velaryon. When Aemond Targaryen and his dragon Vhagar killed young Lucerys and his dragon Eryx during the storm over Shipbreaker Bay, the balance shifted forever. For Rhaenyra, this was no longer about politics, no longer about thrones or lineages. It was about blood for blood. A mother had lost her child, and in that moment, revenge became her guiding light. The realm remembers the war as a political struggle, but make no mistake, it was Rhaenyra's grief and wrath after Lucerys' death that turned a feud into a cataclysm. Rhaenyra's immediate response was vengeance. She demanded retaliation against Alicent's faction, not measured diplomacy. Her allies struck quickly. Prince Daemon, her husband and uncle, orchestrated the infamous blood and cheese revenge. 2 assassins infiltrated the Red Keep and murdered one of Helena's sons in front of her. This was not just a strike at Aegon's family. It was a message, a promise that Rhaenyra would stop at nothing to avenge Lucerys. The cycle was set in motion. Each act of revenge demanded another. Each death fueled another dragon to take flight. Up until Lucerys' death, there was still room for diplomacy. A council, a treaty, or even a compromise might have prevented civil war. But revenge has no interest in compromise. Rhaenyra could not forgive Aemond, nor could she accept half measures. Her vengeance consumed her, and her enemies hardened in response. The realm was no longer negotiating succession. It was taking sides in a blood feud. Politics became war, and revenge became destiny. Dragons are weapons of mass destruction, and revenge wielded them like no king or queen ever had before. Vhagar, Caraxes, Syrax, and more. Each dragon became a tool of retaliation. Castles were burned, cities attacked, and armies decimated, not always strategically, but often out of fury. The more dragons were unleashed, the more uncontrollable the war became. What had begun as Rhaenyra's personal revenge spread like wildfire, dragging the entire realm into the conflict. Rhaenyra began the war as the rightful heir fighting for justice. But as revenge consumed her, her image transformed. To her supporters, she was the Black Queen, fierce and unyielding. To her enemies, she was ruthless, vindictive, and dangerous. Even to her allies, her judgment sometimes seemed clouded by wrath rather than wisdom. This transformation was critical. Revenge did not just trigger the war, it reshaped Rhaenyra herself. She became a symbol of vengeance incarnate, willing to sacrifice almost anything to make her enemies bleed. In the end, what did Rhaenyra's revenge achieve? Her enemies suffered, yes, but so did her allies. Her sons were slain one by one, even as she avenged Lucerys. Her reign was brief and bitter, filled with betrayal, paranoia, and sorrow. The dragons, the very heart of Targaryen power, were nearly wiped from the world. Rhaenyra wanted justice. She wanted her throne. But revenge blinded her to the greater cost: the destruction of her house, her family, and the future of dragonkind. The legacy of the Dance of the Dragons is not just about succession. It's about the dangers of revenge. Rhaenyra's wrath did not die with her. It echoed through Westerosi history. The Targaryen dynasty weakened, never regaining the height of its power. Houses that fought in the war remembered the blood spilled, fueling future conflicts. The extinction of dragons paved the way for Westeros to forget what true fire and blood looked like. Her revenge may have been justified in her heart, but it destroyed more than her enemies. It destroyed the very thing she was fighting to protect: the legacy of House Targaryen. Some argue that even without Lucerys' death, the war was inevitable. The factions were too entrenched. The succession was too contested. The dragons made restraint impossible. But others believed the dance would have remained a cold conflict, fought with words and alliances, had revenge not tipped the scales. Lucerys' death and Rhaenyra's immediate thirst for vengeance ensured there would be no turning back. Revenge was not just a spark. It was gasoline poured over an already smoldering fire. So, why did Rhaenyra's revenge trigger the Dance of the Dragons? Because it transformed a political dispute into a personal blood feud. It turned diplomacy into war, restraint into fury, and dragons into instruments of annihilation. Her grief for Lucerys, her wrath against Alicent and her sons, and her refusal to forgive ignited the skies of Westeros in fire and blood. And while her vengeance was deeply human, born of love, loss, and betrayal,